I'm standing here with Simon Arthur. Welcome to Stockholm.
Thank you.
Before you made this feature version of Silver Tongues, you also made a short film in Scotland.
Yes.
What is the difference making a short film and feature length?
You mean, well, I made several short films, but I think you're referring to the short film version of the story. So I always wrote the film as a feature, but I shot one of the sections because it's kind of in 4 acts, and each act you can watch alone. So I shot one of those sections in Scotland and tried to use that to get funding for the other parts. But with the industry the way it was and other problems, I couldn't do it, and then I moved to the US and just did the whole thing there. But it was kind of like I had to do that section again, you know, so I'd made mistakes and I wanted to change things, and I changed the script. So it was good in a way to have like a trial period and kind of like a practice. So it was good.
Could you tell me in short about Silver Tongues?
Sure. It's about a couple that drive across the US, and each town they come to, they pretend they're different people. So they invent personalities and they use those fake personalities to play games on people and mess with them for sport. And as the kind of games get worse and worse, then they kind of turn on each other.
I've actually heard that you, by choice, during a few months, lived at the brothel and also on the streets. What was the purpose?
I didn't live in the brothel, but I was working there. I was doing security work there, and I worked as a prison guard for 3 months. I started the prison work because I was doing a script that related to that, and I felt like I didn't really understand enough about that world, so I just applied for a job there. And because I got so much from it, that was kind of why I decided to try and work in a brothel and then to live homeless, just to really understand more about people and society and character. I feel like if you're a writer, you have to be open to that stuff, and it was a big help. It really helped me understand people better, because if people generally are writing about a prison or something like that, then they'll do some interviews, but that's not really enough. And what happens is that people regurgitate other documentaries or books or films about prisons or homeless people, and I was desperate to try and avoid that.
Is there anything you wouldn't do, or is everything okay in the sake of the art?
There's clear moral boundaries. Like for instance, when I was working, when I was doing like the homeless thing, I was offered by a company to like wear cameras and to film it as a documentary, but for me that would have been too much. You know, I think that would have been crossing a sort of boundary there. So there's moral boundaries, but I'm willing to go pretty far out there.
You have both written the script and directed Silver Tongues. What's first? What comes first? What are you?
That's a good question. I kind of feel like I wouldn't. I mean, I guess I would write scripts for other people, but I would also direct other people's scripts. So there's not one that I feel like I'm definitely more of. I think it's quite legitimate to say you're a writer-director now, and that's kind of okay, but certainly I spend more time writing just because of the nature of writing, and I do it like all the time, whereas I can only really direct like once every couple of years if I'm lucky. But for me, it's just the general idea. That's the thing that comes first, like what is the film about, the thing you can describe like I did earlier in a few sentences. That's the thing that comes first, and then everything else you kind of build on. And sometimes you take stuff away, and most of the time you're building.
What's next? When do we get to see you again? In which?
So there's a few scripts I have which are completely written. They're like shooting scripts, and then there's one which is kind of in development, which is I'd say about half written. That one is set in the US, and it's kind of about homeless teenagers sort of travelling the US on trains. There's another one which is set in Egypt, like when the revolution happened. I went and I interviewed like a few hundred people all around Cairo and in Tahrir Square, and I've kind of written a script about some of the people I met. And there's another one that's set in Chicago. So right now I'm trying to have lots of pots on the boil and see what happens first, and just see what happens, see what gets funded, because when I'm in between jobs I'll just write a lot. I do have quite a lot of scripts, so if I'm lucky, one of them will come off, but I really have no idea which one.
Do you have any dream project or collaboration with someone?
I'd love to work with Michael Fassbender. I think he's like the best actor in the world right now. I think like Hunger, for me was an absolutely incredible film, and I'm a big like actors director. Like Silver Tongues is really about acting to a certain extent and becoming somebody else. And for me, working with actors is the best part of the job. So whenever I think of like dream collaborations, it's always with actors.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.